Did Bob Mueller support your conclusion?
I don't know whether Bob Mueller supported my conclusion.
Joining us now by phone, the senator who asked that question, Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. You have tweeted your reaction to the breaking news tonight about Robert Mueller's letter, but please expand on that for our audience tonight.
Well, Lawrence, what we saw in Attorney General Barr's response to my question was another in a series of blatantly misleading comments in order to protect the president, to serve not as the attorney general, but as to serve as the chief propagandist for the president and the Trump administration. It came on the heels of the 4-page letter where he mischaracterized entirely Mueller's findings, especially with respect to obstruction of justice. And I've been asking the Attorney General in that hearing a series of questions on obstruction of justice, how he reached the conclusion he did. He refused to answer those, so I simply asked him, did Bob Mueller agree with his conclusions? And he gave the answer you just played, and now we know that he had already received a letter from Bob Mueller taking issue with the way the Attorney General had characterized the conclusions.
Yes, Bob Mueller's letter, to quote it as it appears in the Washington Post, says that what Attorney General Barr wrote about the Mueller report, quote, did not fully capture the context, nature, and substance of this office's work and conclusions. And that's something that Attorney General Barr knew when he gave you that answer, which seemed to, I guess, feign ignorance about Robert Mueller's thinking on this.
Well, that's exactly right, because he had to know in the back of his mind that he'd gotten this letter from Bob Mueller, which, as you just quoted, said that, Attorney General Barr's conclusions did not capture the substance of Mueller's work and conclusions. I asked him whether or not Mueller had agreed with his conclusions, used the same word that was in the Mueller letter. And Barr clearly and deliberately, I believe, misled, not just me, but more, misled the Congress and the public on this. And Lawrence, this is a part of a pattern of behavior, which is why, when the Attorney General can no longer be trusted by the public, it's time for the Attorney General to resign.
And Senator, when you asked that question, did you have any knowledge or information about what the answer to that question should be?
I did not. I was growing very frustrated with the fact that the Attorney General refused to let me know how he had reached a different conclusion with respect to the obstruction of justice charges, or how he had reached a conclusion to exonerate President Trump when Mueller in his report had expressly not exonerated exonerated the president on obstruction of justice. And so when I grew very frustrated with his refusal to tell me how he, Barr, reached that conclusion, I just asked him if he had any reason to believe that Mueller agreed with his conclusions. And no, I did not know, Lawrence, that at that moment, the Attorney General knew and was already in possession of this letter from Mueller.
I have to say, when you asked the question, it seemed like a logical question to me at the time without any other surrounding knowledge about it. It's a normal question to ask. Senator, you're not a member of the Judiciary Committee where William Barr will be testifying tomorrow, but I have a feeling you're going to play a very large role in that hearing. I assume more than one of your colleagues will be quoting that exchange to the Attorney General. Is there something the Attorney General can possibly say that you think could reasonably explain the answer that he gave to you?
I can't think of any plausible explanation, Lawrence, but I do believe that this exchange that I had with the Attorney General will come up. I'm confident my colleagues will pursue that line of questioning, because it's leaving everybody, scratching their heads about his response. But it, of course, does fit this pattern of deception that we've seen from the Attorney General. Very disappointing, but anybody who still believed that the Attorney General was acting as the public's lawyer, I think had a wake-up call from both the letter and sort of this misleading exchange that he had with me.
Senator, do you share my view based on it's based on my experience in government? I know you have more experience in government than I do. That when someone like Robert Mueller writes a letter like that to the Attorney General, it is for the Attorney General, but the author of that letter knows that the letter is going to live in history, knows that eventually that letter is going to be revealed to Congress, and knows that that letter on some news night like this is eventually going to be the big story of the night.
Yes, I believe strongly that Mueller was very disturbed and upset with the way the Attorney General had characterized his report when the Attorney General put together that four-page letter, and that Mueller wanted Mueller's views clearly documented so that there would be no discussion. He wanted them contemporaneously documented for the reasons you're saying. This is an important historical record, and he wanted to go on record on this important question.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, thank you for joining us on this very important night. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you, Senator, very much. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.